Usually when we talk about a financial problem, uh, there's this expectation of precision, right? You expect it to function like engineering.
Yeah, exactly. Like a math problem.
Right. You check your account, you look at the interest rate, and the math outputs this clear number. And then the financial advisor just points at a spreadsheet and says, there it is. That's what you owe. Now pay it.
It's treated as this binary state. You're in the red or you're in the black, positive or negative. I mean, we really prefer our financial issues to be clean and visible, easily categorized into a simple equation.
Oh, for sure. But when you step into the actual lived experience of owing money, suddenly that calculator is just completely broken.
Completely.
We're looking at a landscape that is, well, entirely psychological. It's like trying to diagnose a software glitch by only looking at the hardware. You can stare at the bank statements all day, but the actual bug is in your psychological operating system.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
And that is exactly what we are focusing on today. We are taking our sources, primarily this deeply insightful text called The Silent Weight, the psychological toll of debt. And we're going to look at the invisible psychological architecture of owing money.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this because the central premise here flips traditional personal finance completely upside down. Debt is rarely just about late fees or compound interest. It's this silent weight that basically strips away your cognitive bandwidth while you just walk around pretending everything is fine.
Yeah, and the overarching goal for us today is to understand the mechanics behind that invisible weight. We really need to look at why two people with the exact same objective debt load.
Like, say they both owe $15,000.
Right, exactly 15,000 on a credit card. Why can they have entirely different physiological and psychological experiences? One person might view that balance as a manageable, albeit annoying checklist item, but the other person is experiencing this daily physiological state of drowning.
And the drowning is usually totally silent. I mean, you might be out there having a seemingly normal dinner with friends, showing up to your meetings, keeping up appearances, but underneath, your heart is just racing because you are mentally calculating if your debit card is going to clear for a $5 coffee.
Yeah.
It is an emotional crisis masquerading as a math problem.
Let's actually examine what is literally happening in the human brain during that coffee shop scenario, because the source material details how a simple digital notification, like a low balance alert on your phone, it ceases to be processed by the brain as numerical data.
Wait, really? It doesn't process it as math at all?
Nope. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part that handles logic and math, just gets bypassed entirely.
Oh, wow.
Instead, the amygdala registers that alert as an acute threat to your survival. Your chest tightens, cortisol just floods your system. The brain is processing a banking alert with the exact same biological stress response as, facing a physical predator.
Which means you aren't just losing money. You're actively losing cognitive capacity. The text points to these studies showing that chronic financial pressure demonstrably reduces cognitive performance.
What's fascinating here is the biological mechanism driving that reduction. When you are financially overwhelmed, your nervous system is pushed into this chronic state of survival mode.
Right.
And in this state, the brain reallocates energy away from high-level executive functioning. So things like long-term planning, impulse control, rational analysis.
All the stuff you actually need to get out of debt?
Exactly. It directs all of that energy entirely toward immediate threat mitigation. You wake up calculating, you go to sleep calculating, what's due this week? What if my car breaks down? Your brain simply has less physical space to focus on anything else.
I think of it like a computer running way too many heavy background applications.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right. Like you're trying to render a 4K video while running 50 browser tabs while downloading a massive system update. Suddenly the cooling fan is screaming, the mouse won't move across the screen, and the whole system freezes if you just try to open a simple text document.
Because there's simply no RAM left.
Exactly. There's no working memory available for the computer to execute a basic task.
Yeah.
And that's what debt does to the human brain. You can't make calm, rational decisions because the background application of how do I survive the end of the month is consuming like 99% of your processing power.
And that lack of RAM creates this brutal, self-perpetuating loop. Chronic financial stress pushes you into survival mode, which eats your cognitive bandwidth. And operating with depleted bandwidth leads directly to poorer, more impulsive decision-making.
Because you're exhausted.
Right. And those poor decisions inevitably create more debt, which in turn generates even higher cortisol levels and further diminishes your cognitive performance. You become biologically locked into a cycle of mental exhaustion. Your brain literally never reaches a baseline state of rest.
But that internal lack of RAM doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? You're operating with near zero mental bandwidth, and then you step out into an external world that is perfectly optimized to exploit that exact vulnerability,
Right.
specifically the digital landscape.
Oh, absolutely. The social ecosystem acts as a massive accelerant. We are constantly exposed to this cultural performance of success. You open a feed and you are just bombarded with curated signals of financial stability.
Yeah, aggressive career milestones,
Yeah.
passive income screenshots, luxury vacations.
Right.
But let me push back on this for a second. We should assume everyone listening knows that Instagram is a highlight reel. I mean, we all know logically that algorithms prioritize the spectacular and that a lot of what we see is heavily leveraged or just outright fabricated.
For sure.
So if I logically know that a peer's post about buying a new house might be financed to the absolute brink, why does seeing it still trigger such a profound sense of inadequacy when I'm struggling? Like, why does it still emotionally devastate us?
Because, as the source synthesizes so well, humans are emotional before they are logical, especially when the brain is already operating in that low RAM, high cortisol state we just talked about.
Oh, right. The logic center is already bypassed.
Exactly. When your system is flooded with stress hormones, the logical filter of, oh, this is just a curated image, is completely overridden by a really primal mechanism of social comparison. Evolutionarily, observing peers acquiring vast resources while you have none signals a direct threat to your status and your survival within the tribe.
Wow.
It bypasses logic completely and hits your deepest insecurities, forcing you to basically question your fundamental competence as an adult.
It transforms a financial circumstance into a moral failure.
Yeah.
You start feeling like you just intrinsically failed at growing up.
Yeah.
How are people my age buying cars? And that naturally breeds a massive amount of shame.
It does.
And the text makes a really sharp point here regarding how dangerous shame is, specifically because it triggers avoidance behaviors.
Yeah, avoidance is the hallmark symptom of debt-induced shame. It manifests as leaving emails unread, silencing unknown numbers so you don't have to hear from collectors, and entirely refusing to check your account balances.
See, I want to challenge this avoidance concept, though.
Okay, go ahead.
If I logically know that ignoring an email from a creditor is going to result in a $50 late fee, basic self-preservation dictates that I should just open the email.
Yeah.
Is the text arguing that the brain literally overrides our financial self-interest just to avoid a momentary feeling of shame?
It absolutely is overriding it, because the brain calculates the threats differently than a spreadsheet would.
Oh, interesting.
Right. To a mind that's already exhausted by chronic stress, opening that email represents an acute spike in psychological pain. It's a direct confrontation with failure. So the brain treats that acute emotional pain as a more immediate, dangerous threat than a theoretical late fee that will be applied sometime in the future.
So the brain chooses the late fee.
Yes. The brain chooses the late fee to avoid the pain. And the source goes out of its way to emphasize that this behavior is not laziness, which is a massive societal misconception.
Oh, yeah. People love to call it lazy.
Right. But it is severe mental and emotional exhaustion. The system is just shutting down to protect itself from further psychological damage.
Which isolates the person entirely. Because if you're avoiding the numbers, you're also avoiding the conversations. You can't ask for help, which isolates you, which then amplifies the shame, locking you even deeper into the loop.
Exactly.
So if shame feels like a threat and avoidance is the defense mechanism, how do people self-regulate?
Well, they seek out immediate relief.
Sure.
And understanding how they seek relief requires us to dismantle this really pervasive cultural myth that debt is exclusively the result of frivolous choices.
Right, the avocado toast argument.
Exactly. The classic narrative suggests that financial struggle is simply a failure of willpower. And look, while poor choices obviously exist, the text highlights that systemic realities, things like medical emergencies, hyperinflation, sudden job loss, or the burden of supporting aging parents, these are often the primary drivers.
Life just happens.
Yeah. People are frequently trying to survive in an economy where the baseline cost of existence has just completely outpaced wages.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because the text doesn't shy away from the spending that is a choice. It dives deep into emotional spending. People aren't necessarily going into debt to live this lavish lifestyle. They are spending money just to feel a baseline level of normal.
They're purchasing emotional regulation.
Yes. You feel completely burned out, lonely, and stripped of agency by this invisible weight we've been talking about. So you buy something.
Right.
And for a brief moment, that transaction gives you a hit of dopamine. It provides this fleeting sense of control and autonomy over your own life. It functions exactly like a painkiller.
A painkiller that temporarily numbs the symptom while exacerbating the underlying disease.
Precisely. You're using a financial transaction to treat financial stress. The painkiller relieves the agony for an hour or maybe a day, but then the guilt of the purchase crashes down. That adds to the total debt load, which increases the baseline stress, necessitating an even stronger painkiller the next time.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the asymmetry of the environment where this choice happens. The modern consumer isn't just making a poor decision in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
They are up against multi-billion-dollar neuromarketing apparatuses. Companies understand this psychological loop of ego depletion and decision fatigue perfectly. Modern advertising rarely sells the actual utility of a product anymore. It sells identity.
It sells confidence, freedom, belonging, peace of mind.
It sells the exact psychological states that debt strips away.
Wow, that's dark.
It is. The implicit message woven into modern marketing is basically, you are incomplete, you are falling behind, and you will remain inadequate until you acquire this. They are weaponizing human insecurity.
Yeah.
They are algorithmically targeting consumers who are already exhausted and operating in survival mode. When you pitch an identity of success and control to a brain that is literally starving for both, that marketing is devastatingly effective.
Especially for younger demographics who came of age during cascading economic uncertainties. You have people dealing with inherently unstable job markets and historically high costs of living, carrying all of that systemic weight while fighting an asymmetrical war against algorithms designed to drain their wallets.
It's a lot.
The cognitive load is staggering, and carrying that load for years leads to what the text identifies as the most dangerous phase of this entire cycle, the identity shift.
The total breakdown of a person's sense of self.
Yeah, the text argues that the absolute worst part of debt has nothing to do with the math. It is the insidious way it erodes your trust in your own judgment.
Right.
You experience financial struggle for so long that you begin to view your own decision-making process as inherently flawed. You become terrified of making another mistake. You become scared to pivot in your career, scared to invest, scared to dream big. Every single choice, even just buying basic groceries, carries this heavy, paralyzing weight of potential ruin.
And this is the psychological threshold where a circumstance mutates into an identity. It is the transition from having debt to being debt.
Yeah. You move from acknowledging, I have a systemic or behavioral financial problem, to believing, I am fundamentally irresponsible. I am the problem.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If someone is listening to this and recognizing that identity shift in themselves, how do they break out of the cycle? How do you initiate a recovery when your own brain has learned that every action leads to a negative outcome, and it's convinced you that you are the broken variable?
Well, the psychological term for what you're describing is learned helplessness. When a person experiences repeated negative outcomes despite their efforts, like, say, paying down a balance only to get hit with a surprise medical bill right after,
The worst.
the brain's reward center actually rewires itself. It learns that action is futile and hope just disappears. So to fight that, the source provides a critical cognitive anchor. You must forcefully uncouple your identity from your circumstance.
Okay, separate the two.
Yes. Debt is a temporary state of resource allocation. It is not a permanent definition of your character. Furthermore, breaking the illusion of isolation is completely mandatory. You have to remember that the asymmetric marketing and those curated social feeds we discussed, they're hiding a vast ocean of shared struggle.
Right.
Many of the people projecting absolute financial dominance online are secretly drowning in the exact same leveraged reality.
Oh, absolutely. The entrepreneur aggressively selling a course on wealth might be heavily over-leveraged just to keep the ads running. The realization that appearances hide reality is what shatters that isolation. And that leads us to the source's actual roadmap for sustainable recovery. The text doesn't just diagnose the trauma, it outlines how to heal. And the foundation of that healing isn't a new budgeting app. It's radical emotional honesty.
True recovery requires bypassing the modern trend of toxic positivity.
Yeah.
It is not about standing in front of a mirror reciting wealth affirmations while you ignore your bank statement.
That's right. I am wealthy. I am wealthy. No, it's the incredibly difficult ability to look at the reality and say, I am exhausted. I am operating in survival mode. I have made mistakes. I have been dealt a bad hand systemically, and I need a structural plan.
Yes.
Denial protects the ego in the short term, sure, but honesty is what actually generates forward momentum.
But we also have to confront the reality of that momentum. The process of financial recovery is agonizingly slow.
Painfully slow.
You commit to the emotional honesty, you sacrifice, you optimize your budget, you work extra hours, you deny yourself those painkiller purchases, and after 6 months you look at the principal balance and it barely seems to have moved.
Yeah, that's brutal.
We live in a culture that promises frictionless, instant results. When applied to the slow reality of debt reduction, that friction can entirely destroy a person's motivation.
Which is why the text introduces the concept of emotional discipline. It's not just financial discipline. It's the psychological endurance to maintain a protocol when the progress is completely invisible to the naked eye. Financial healing isn't a 30-day challenge.
No.
It's a multi-year rewiring of your biological stress responses and your material reality.
And we must redefine the end goal of that healing process. The objective of financial peace is rarely what the cultural narrative suggests.
It is definitely not about acquiring enough luxury to finally impress the algorithm.
Not at all. The true objective is mental freedom. It is the restoration of your cognitive RAM.
Yes.
It's the ability to walk into a grocery store and purchase food without initiating a biological stress response. It is the capacity to sit on your couch on a Sunday and just rest, without the crushing guilt that you should be monetizing your free time.
Oh, that's huge.
It is opening a piece of mail without your heart rate spiking. Those physiological baseline states, they sound entirely mundane until you are robbed of them. Reclaiming them is everything.
That reframing changes the entire conversation. It shows exactly why the source text demands a massive increase in empathy when we discuss financial struggle. We have to look at the lack of baseline financial literacy, the reality of inherited generational instability, the invisible caregiving burdens people carry.
Right.
We are looking at exhausted human nervous systems trying to navigate increasingly predatory and complex economic architectures.
This raises an important question for everyone listening. It challenges you to re-examine your own financial anxieties or the perceived financial failings of the people in your life. We really must view these struggles through a lens of systemic and psychological burden rather than pure moral deficiency.
For sure.
Shame is an incredibly poor tool for behavioral change. It isolates and paralyzes. Empathy, structural support, and realistic, shame-free education actually facilitate movement. The numbers in a bank ledger do not represent a final verdict on human worth.
Beautifully said. Debt can actually serve as a profound turning point.
Yep.
It can be the exact friction required for a person to finally say, I refuse to let my nervous system live in this state of chronic survival anymore.
Yeah.
Facing that invisible weight takes a staggering amount of hidden psychological strength. Which brings us right back to where we started today. An engineering problem is clean. A broken bone provides a clear, undeniable line on an X-ray. But a psychological weight? That is entirely invisible.
It really is.
It takes immense courage to diagnose and treat an invisible wound, especially when society insists on telling you that it's just a math problem you were too irresponsible to solve. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week. If modern advertising and significant sectors of our economy inherently rely on keeping us in a state of feeling emotionally incomplete so that we continually purchase temporary painkillers with money we don't have, is achieving true, quiet financial peace actually the ultimate act of modern rebellion? Think about what it means to just buy groceries without anxiety and rest without guilt in a system designed to make you panic. Think about that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.